the other day, and a doctor and a vicar walk into the Bavard bar. So I'm just going to say hello, and then David will say hello.
Hello.
We haven't rehearsed. So although it's a double act, I'm actually the warm-up act. So we're standing up to say hello, and then I'm going to do a little bit of a preamble for our topic. The regrets come later, because actually what we're passionate about is talking about death and dying. We're in the grave slot. The reason we're here is Die Matters Awareness Week is in a couple of weeks' time. So we were. It was a suggestion that we come along and talk about death and dying. So I'm the doctor, and as the death and dying, the doctor comes before the vicar. I've worked in hospices, and we both work in the local hospice of Wilfrid's Hospice. I obviously spend a lot of time dealing with death and dying as a professional doctor, but actually I want you to open up and talk about experience of death and dying, so it would be wrong for me to talk as a doctor. So I'm going to talk about a personal experience before the main act. Like many people, my first experience of death and dying was my wonderful grandparents, but I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that. A life-changing event happened to me 3 years ago when I had the privilege of actually caring for a loved one who did die in my house. So this is our nephew Danny, who's a mischief little bugger. This is us on holiday, and this is the night before one of the worst hangovers of my life. He was completely instigating it. So this holiday we had together, he's my husband's nephew. This holiday was an amazing holiday, 9 months after he got married to his lovely wife Lauren. Unfortunately, 3 months after our holiday, he was diagnosed with leukemia. And this is him with his nephews, the next generation. And we supported him through that. He was dealt with it all amazingly. This is him the night after his discharge from hospital, after all his chemo was finished. Everything was going well. Far the doctors go, yeah, you're cured, let's wait and see what happens. Well, first thing I want to mention is he was so incredible because he wanted to make sure whatever happens, his wife would be okay. So we had a conversation, say, okay, they've told me it's cured, but I know it could come back. And we talk a lot about beating the battle of cancer, and he did a lot of that, but I also said, but I might still die. I want to be open and talk about that. And so through that conversation, he was able to talk to his employers and make sure that if it did come back, his wife would be okay. And they had a death in service sort of arrangement, which he didn't know about until he was able to actually talk about it, which was quite impressive. So, managed to get this far, so forward. Anyone recognise this place? There is relevance. Anyone know where this is? This is Jersey Zoo. So I was in Jersey Zoo. We were glamping. So we had a week's holiday, my husband and I, for my niece's birthday. She was turning 18, having a family party. So Danny was back in the hospital. We all kind of knew the cancer was probably back, but we didn't really know. And I was actually in the zoo when I got a phone call from Danny to say it's confirmed it's back. But he was actually quite calm because at that point at least he knew why the pain was there, why he couldn't see out of his right eye, and why he was having trouble walking. So that was fine. He said, I'm okay, I'm fine, enjoy your time, we'll see you when you come back. 2 days later, we get the phone call from his sister that everyone dreads to say the doctors have been in the hospital today and actually he's deteriorating, they think he might not make the weekend. So, as one does when he's in an island on the Channel, we got the first plane back, horrible journey back to King's College Hospital. But as soon as we arrived there, he packed up, we were very close. My husband and I arrived at the hospital, we had an evening, and then he asked me a question, because he knew time was short. And it's a question to this day I knew he was going to ask, no one else did, and his question was, I've got to get to the hospital, can I come and stay with you guys in Brighton? This is something, weekend at Uncle Pat's was a thing that we did, and this is what he wanted to do when he died. So I said, yeah, of course, we had talked about it, my husband and I, so we said, yes, we'll do that. So, in his last week of life, he had some goals. Get out of the hospital. This is him the day he arrived in our sort of, living room in a hospital bed. This is why he couldn't move his legs, needed complete care, which his wife and I provided for him. And he had a bit of a checklist. He didn't want to regret anything, but what he wanted, he didn't have a big bucket list, he just wanted to be normal. He wanted to enjoy food again. He ate so much, he didn't eat anything in the hospital, and he just ate so much. We hoisted him up to our living room. And after he had this amazing cooked breakfast and he finished it all, he sat on our sofa and wrote his eulogy for his funeral, which was going to be a couple of weeks away. And it was the most remarkable experience. other things he wanted to do, he wanted to watch the end of that current season of Game of Thrones with his wife, which he did. They lay in bed next to each other and just watched Game of Thrones because that's what they wanted to do. There was no big stuff on his bucket list. He made peace with some of the family members he needed to, but he really wanted to spend some last days with his friends and family. So he said, well, you're tired quite quickly, why don't we just have a barbecue for all your friends? And we did. And it was just remarkable. So this is the Saturday. So he came to our house on the Tuesday, and all his friends were there. It was the most amazing 3 hours. He drank himself stupid. He smoked all kinds of things he shouldn't be, and, but that's what Danny did. And it was just the most amazing time. His friends just saw it as a normal event. The only problem was when we had to change his catheter or move him, and his friends realised how ill he actually was. But it was the most remarkable thing. And this incredible picture is at the end of the night where he's just having the most amazing time because he was a bit of a party lad, and he really had no regrets. The night before the party, his best friend phoned him with a picture of his newly born baby who he named after him, and the only regret he had is that he hadn't been able to have a child himself. But he died 3 days after this, which I won't share with you, but I can if you want to ask. But it was one of the most beautiful and sad things all at the same time. And the reason I'm sharing this is to forerun into no regrets, and also just to role model, hopefully, that it's okay to talk about difficult things around death and dying. So I might regret it now, but I'm going to pass on to the other David. Thank you.
I think I've got one of the best jobs in the world, because my job means that I get to talk to people when they're at their most amazing, when they're maybe engaging in a period of intense thinking, more intense than any time since their teens, early adulthood maybe. And I get to talk to people when they're at the most noble, when they're most without pretense, and where the laughter is absolutely straight from the gut and straight from the heart. And I get to meet people who have an opportunity to express all that love that sometimes just gets hidden behind a whole bunch of stuff that we think we're supposed to do. It's a great job to have. And I've got a few colleagues here in the room, and David and I, probably all of us, I think would probably say we are really, really fortunate to work where we do. You learn so much about life and yourself and anything that's going wrong in your life. You know, at any one time, there's 20 people just down the corridor who would love to swap with you, problem for problem. It's a great perspective exercise. Living without regrets is what we both wanted to say this evening, acknowledging the fact that it's probably not possible, but it's really good to try. And I think we can learn some wisdom from places we don't often look. We often look to gurus and all sorts of people who are really well publicised as thinkers and reflectors, and we forget where the real wisdom often lies, which is just with us, figuring out what it is to be where we find ourselves in life. And this, and the slide sort of slipped off the edge a bit there, but it's the 5 regrets of the dying. There was an Australian nurse called Ronnie Ware, and she spent quite a bit of time in the UK, and she worked with the dying. She's a palliative care nurse, and she had lots of conversations with lots of people, and from all those conversations she came up with a list of 5 regrets that are most commonly expressed by people who are dying. So this is wisdom from the edge. This is learning from the truly great, I think. People who are facing up to that precipice we all have to walk over alone, and trying to leave a message, trying to leave something behind to guide. And I want to tell you just briefly about these 5 regrets, and then tell you a story at the end of it. So, the first one I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life others expected of me. This is so common, we can all probably feel our way into that one. The big problem, and I don't know why we end up doing it, but it's such a problem for us that we all seem to face huge pressures to live inauthentically, to deny ourselves and pretend to be things we're not, and to do things we don't really want to do or even believe in. And I so enjoyed the first presentation, the idea that you know, we can't actually solve new problems with old thinking. It's a new situation. We need to think fresh. And I think sometimes we approach our lives and shape it with a bunch of old thinking. And there's nothing wrong with tradition. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that it's good to look into ourselves at certain moments, maybe all of our lives, and just try to remember what is true to us at a particular time. Try to live as close to what lies inside of us as possible. And part of this, I think, is the preparedness to take risks. I just put a health warning on this one. I'm not offering this as a total solution. This is wisdom from the edge, gathered by one dutiful nurse, an intelligent nurse. Part of it is the preparedness to take risks. A lot of people reach the end of their lives and suddenly realise that they've not even attempted half of the things that sat inside them as dreams. And there were probably lots of reasons for that. But it is never too late to have a go. And the important thing is, it doesn't matter if your risk pans out or not. It's having had a go that seems to be the important thing. Reaching the end of your life suddenly aware of all the dreams you've not honoured, all the things you wanted to have a go at. And it's never too late to start, really. That's the first bit of wisdom. Second bit of wisdom, and I probably don't need to say much about that. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Ronnie found that this was principally a problem because of the demographic of people who were dying in the area where she was working. It was principally a problem for men who'd missed out on all the really important things. You know, the little things about family, around your children, your relationship with your partner. All these little things that make the patchwork of your life, that in the end are the things that really matter when you look back. Not all the stuff you thought that was terribly important at the time. Wow, it'd be so good to complete that on deadline. I just have to miss the birthday party. Actually, you don't. You're missing the most important thing in the day. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. David mentioned the sort of doctor and vicar walking to the Bavard bar thing. I'm not really a vicar now. I'm something called a spiritual support lead. But I was a vicar for 20 years in a couple of parishes, Manchester and Warwickshire. And one of the things that you do when you're a priest as part of the formation is that you write your eulogy. And when I was a young man, and I didn't keep it because it's like the poetry you write at university, it's better for the world that it's burnt, really. I didn't keep the eulogy, but I can remember what was really important to me, and it was all my achievements, all my talents and gifts. And then as I grew older, that changed. And the most recent time I did this, it was all about how marvellous it was that I'd had a hand in sort of creating two human beings, my children, and just thinking about them, and friendships and some great memories, and my wife and the story we share. And suddenly that's my eulogy. Those are the things that are really important to me. And I'm so grateful to have figured that out sooner than most. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Number 3, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. I don't know whether it's always going to be a problem, but for my generation, and I'm a Mancunian, I don't know whether there's something particular about that either, but you were expected to keep your feet on the ground. You were not expected to show emotion as a boy. The principal value, family value that I was raised with, being from a largely military family, was you keep your shoes shiny and you don't blub in public. There's something being missed, I think, for many of us when we are too afraid to say how we really feel. And there's something about authentic living here as well. I'm angry about that. I don't agree with that, rather than just trying to keep the peace and say, oh yeah, well, I can see you've got a point. Actually, if it's pants, it's okay to say, that's pants. Let it out. And I'm still working on that one. But I've found, and I've no evidence for this, but this might ring a bell for David and some of my colleagues here, but every now and again you get someone who sort of turns their face to the wall towards the end, sometimes literally, as a profound gloom settles in them. And on the few occasions I've known something about the story of their lives, I've noticed this profound gloom is associated with people who've breathed in, swallowed their passion and their opinions. I wish to have the courage to express my feelings. Number 4, I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. Oh, I've overrun. Is it still okay?
Keep going, yeah.
Yeah, because
a few more minutes, yeah.
I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. Friendships are really golden. Don't ask me for the author of this, but there was a study done not long ago, a few years ago. It was quite a large questionnaire-based thing, and they discovered that most men in England, it was an English-based survey, of about my age, late 50s, didn't have a single close male friend. That's weird. We know how much friendship matters to us, and somehow we let it run through our fingers, and at the end so many people wish they'd put the energy into maintaining their friendships. A strange one. I wish I'd let myself be happier. Nature and life throws weird stuff at us all the time, and we have to cope with it, and we're not in charge in that, but there's a surprising amount of our life where happiness is actually a choice. And we sometimes don't realise that while we're healthy, and sometimes we only realise that when we're ill. Have I got time to finish with a story?
Yeah.
Great.
Do you need the slides to move on?
The final slide.
Oh, the final slide, yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely, thank you.
Is that it?
Yeah, this is about Dying Matters Week. Read that while I'm telling the story. This is really important stuff. It's a Gulliver story. Swift was telling a whole bunch of stories about what it is for a human being of his time and space to find themselves in strange situations. And the stories were telling us something about what it is to be alive and what's important. And one of the islands he landed on had a proportion of the population who were immortal. And Gulliver was very taken with this and thought, wow, I could spend a century learning all law and ethics, and I could govern the people with perfect equity. And his host explains the reality, which is that the immortals marry once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times maybe, and their partners die, they see their children die, their grandchildren die, their great-grandchildren die, all their friends. And after a while, so traumatised are they by this, that they retreat from human contact. The mind is marvellous but finite, and after a while their brains no longer function as they'd want them to. And the immortals, far from being admired, were widely pitied on this island and had to be kept in secure accommodation at a perpetual cost to the taxpayer. Mortality isn't necessarily the enemy. mortality actually makes the moments matter and properly viewed as a friend. What really is the enemy is to live inauthentically and not to bear in mind the wisdom from the edge. Thank you.
Excellent.
Do keep an eye out for these beer mats, which was Liz's. Do you want to say something about the beer mats?
Yeah, well, Dying Matters Week is the 14th of May, and so Wilburs Hospice have put together some beer mats that we're distributing around local clubs and pubs, and hoping that other people will sit down, have a drink and have a chat about death and dying.
Excellent, excellent. Well, that's it. In fact, we had, I think last month, we had a celebrant here, Nuala Giri. I don't know if anyone was here to hear her give a brilliant talk about death again, and here it is. Back on the Bavard Bar agenda, but it's a fascinating talk, and I'm glad that you've given it. Does anybody have any questions about anything, any of the issues that? Yes, right.
So, the risk of being a little twee. I am quite an avid listener of Radio 2, and Chris Evans lost his mum this morning, and he wrote the most moving speech because he backed out of his radio show this morning, and the line that, as I was driving to work this morning, that kind of got me was, "There is no battle lost, only a life won," and that struck me as a really, because often when people pass away and we lose ones, we talk about them losing a battle, they lost the fight, blah blah blah. And actually, did they? Because as long as you live your life for every day, maybe actually what you won along the way was a life.
Yeah.
And that actually brought a tear to my eye, as I say, at the risk of being twee, when I was driving to the office this morning. So I thought it was a brilliant talk, I just wanted to say that.
Thank you for sharing. But in a way, that's what we hope to do. Actually, was just.
Yeah.
Well, we have a strange attitude to death in the West, don't we? Since we don't talk about it, it's a bit taboo. As long as we're not going to die, whereas the one thing we know is going to happen, we are all going to die at some point. On that cheery note, does anybody have any other questions for David about death and the life?
Or life, actually.
Or life,
life.
Yes.
It's not really a question. It's more about what I expected from it, really. And when you said what they say right at the very end, what I got most from it, I thought you were going to say it's inspiring to be with people who are vulnerable or people who are scared. But what you said was people who are noble and that blew me away a little bit, because I just thought that absolutely people who are on the edge are not necessarily vulnerable, they're knowledgeable because they've been somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought it was truly inspiring what both of you did, so thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Yes, there's a hand waving, yes. Yeah.
It's a really made plug for hospice care, because I know these two guys do a wonderful job, but really the key message of hospice care is that it is about living, and living every minute in the best way that you can until the end. And a lot of people think about hospices as being places to do with death and dying, and yes they are, but they're just as much about living and enjoying every moment of life, and I don't think enough people know that too.
No, that's a good point. And it did come across in terms of what you were saying, that is the essence of how to live and how to live well and true.
My personal lesson caring for Danny, I mean, the moment he died was bizarre and beautiful at the same time. I won't go into detail, but I realise that death is a social and personal thing. It's not medical. I mean, I'm just a facilitator. I'm there to listen. I'm there to support. I'll do empathically as best I can. But actually, the actual process of dying well has nothing to do with us as professionals. We are simply there to try and make it as easy as possible. And actually, we get more out of it probably than we put in. Actually.
Excellent. Well, on which very positive note then, can we thank the two gentlemen?